Hi, good morning, good evening, maybe afternoon, depends on where you're from. It's actually nighttime over here. I want to talk about something that is fairly interesting. I don't have any ideas about it, but I have come across the debate questions that was actually raised in the high school of my daughter's high school, and they have this, to me, kind of ridiculously difficult debating questions. Okay. Yeah, so weird. The first one is, would the sanction be effective to force some of the countries to impose equal human rights? So, like, serious? This is a question for secondary school students for the debate. This is like really hard. And the second one is, should the AI be granted with equal human rights? Now, there's some backgrounds to why the AI should be given equal human rights, but I'll talk about it maybe the next time. This is like really hard. Let me just go through the first one first. I'm not even sure if I can do well for this, but let me just give it a try. So in case you don't know what is a sanction is like a punishment. It's more like a punishment from one country to another country, or maybe from one country to several countries, or several countries to one country, basically meaning that they will, apart from having a war militarily, what they do is they will block you from having trades, means you cannot do bank transfer with another countries, you cannot buy and sell with these countries, and basically means they will tarnish the economic situation of the country that they're trying to punish. And there are many forms of punishment as well. It can sometimes be a punishment on the person, it can sometimes be a punishment on a country. So there are really many forms of punishment. So let's just call it sanction for the way it is called. Would sanction actually force human rights to be imposed on another country? My personal opinion is, just take it as an opinion. If you have something else, you can talk about it below. My opinion is that it may or it may not. It really depends on the leadership of the country. Some countries will bound, some countries will not. For example, US has been trying to impose some sanctions on Iran because they don't want them to develop some so-called nuclear weapons. I'm not even sure if they're really developing that. There's too many stories behind it. And Cuba did not bow to America as well. So is North Korea. But there are some countries that they will bow, and they will bow very quickly to the sanctions. Like, for example, I think Taiwan is pretty weak in this area. They pretty much say yes to everything, even Japan and Korea to US. So would it actually work? That will really depends on the leadership of the countries. And here is about, would the sanction be effective on the countries that was being imposed on for the change of the human rights. Now, when you talk about human rights, I assume that you actually comes in from the US perspective of the human right, because you probably think that that is the most, the best, the highest quality, or maybe the most ethical human rights that was ever being imposed, because of how you were being raised and informed by the media based on the generation nowadays, because they have the greatest they have the I don't know what you call it, so they have the greatest influence in terms of the media. So they want you to believe that the Western so-called, or maybe the US ways of human rights are the best. For example, maybe white supremacy. Not really, but you know what I mean. So not every Western people are like this. Western people are also very nice. I'm talking about some people that I have known personally. They are also very nice. I'm talking about the government of those Western countries. Somehow they want to impose their own ideologies to the other countries, knowing that sometimes there might be a difference in terms of the religious practice in terms of the cultural practice, in terms of whatever is more suitable for their own people at that regions, at their own climates, as well as their own cultural backgrounds, but they don't really care about that. They want the US so-called democracy to be imposed on other countries, and that is where I think is not a very advanced things, or maybe not very ethical things to do. So would that actually be successful? Yes, that would depend on the leadership of the country, but it may not be the best things to do. By doing so, it makes Americans having the ease of life to wherever they are traveling to. Everyone will speak English because English is the language, and the Western culture is going to be their culture. The Western human rights will be the human rights. For example, having equal rights for women, is that a good thing? I would say yes, that would be a good thing. So items by items, you can actually say it that way. So you can impose things items by items, but you cannot overall do everything. So some countries believe that LGBT should not be the way of life, but some countries do believe that LGBT should be the way of life. There's nothing against the LGBTs. If you choose to be the way you want it to be, then you can say you're born, but I'll say you choose because I choose to be a man. Okay. And if you choose to be the way you want it to be, then you cannot expect others to also follow the way you want it to. So if you don't like the way that you're living in that region, that why not you just I know you cannot say move away from the country because it's a little bit weird, but maybe you hang around with the groups that you want. So because I feel that they are not accepting the things that I want, or the ideology that I want them to believe in, doesn't mean that it is right. For example, if I would like the Americans to all become a Buddhist because I believe that the Buddhism way is the best, or even Christianity within America themselves, that I think Christianity is the way of life. So can I actually impose that like forcefully to everybody? Otherwise you will somehow being sanctioned. I don't think that's the right thing to do. Really, that's not the right thing to do. So speaking of the perspective of human rights, everybody should be respected in the way they want it to be, but also depends on the climate and the culture of the place itself. So for example, if Saudi Arabia do not want to believe that they do not want to give equal rights to LGBT or people that are not practicing their things, even for me to feel that women not having equal rights in some of the Middle East countries is a really harsh thing. But how much do I know that the system is not working for them? I'm not living there. I personally am not living there. I'm not staying in places like Taiwan or Japan, where they have culture that's very, very different from what I can believe in or what I can tolerate or accept. And there are places where things are done very, very differently. And for example, I'll just give you some examples. In the Americas, I'm not sure if you know about that. For example, Elon Musk's father actually married his own stepdaughter and have children. Is that something that is acceptable in America? Of course, not in general, but for example, if it ever comes to become a norm, because most of the people start to accept it. I don't care whether it's ethical or unethical, but if you want it to be imposed on someone else's country, that this thing must be accepted, or else I will punish you, is a different level of things. I keep talking LGBT, but I'm not really just want to talk about LGBT. I want to talk about the overall human rights in terms of the way of life, the way they live their life, the way they make their money. Some countries choose to be working harder than another country. Because working hard, nobody will want to impose something on them. However, if you observe carefully, politically, sometimes it doesn't work that way, because um, if the Asian countries works much more harder, they're starting to develop a lot of economy activities, and people start traveling into Asia, money start flowing into Asia, and people start to go into Asia, and they are, I'm talking about comparison right now. If you have a place that's working harder, then you're comparing to places that are working less harder. You know what I mean? So places that are working less harder used to be the more prestigious country, and they have more wealth because they used to be working harder, but the younger generation or the next generation tends not to work as hard. However, they still want to enjoy the high level of living. So they kind of invent a lot of international laws, different taxation systems, and want it to be imposed on countries that are so-called weaker in terms of their military, because they believe in trade instead of weapons, whatever it is. So they will be forced to follow it, or they will be sanctioned. It is not the right thing to do, but you get what I mean. So this is not related to human rights. However, when it comes back to human rights, it is not as easy as saying that I want you to do it. If not, you will be punished. It's not ethical to me. I think this is beyond morality. I might still have something to say, but I'll just keep it short.